All right, welcome everybody. We got a full house here, so we'll give everybody just a minute or two to get situated. Go ahead and grab your drinks, smoke them if you got them, whatever your pleasure here. Um, but we'll do some quick intros, quick housekeeping stuff, and a fair amount to cover tonight. And I think, at least for us, for Dan and I, kind of a little bit of fun subject matter, if that's maybe a little bit too generous of a word here, but what can we do? What can we control within the rules of the game here to make ourselves eligible for more money, right? For bigger discounts. So, because certainly there's some strategies that most of us can implement that's just going to put our best foot forward, and that's what we're here to talk about. So, by way of quick introduction, my name is Matt Carpenter. I'm a founder here at College Aid Pro. This is my 20th tour, 20th year shepherding families through this process. So I like to think that gives me some might be my best credential, right? If I haven't seen it all, I've seen pretty stinking close to it. So, and Dan's right there with me. I forget if it's more or less or right around there. Is that about?
Yeah, I hate to say it, and big time you right off the bat, but this is 21 for me.
Wow. Okay, buddy. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, since 2004. Sorry if my math's right.
It was so. There you go, guys. You got 40 years of frontline experience. That's tens of thousands of families that we've guided through this process. And again, we're not. Well, we're bragging to one another, but I think that's relevant because one of the things we want you to be doing tonight is asking questions, right? Like, what's keeping you up at night? What's confusing you? We want you to be very active, specifically in the Q&A, because whichever one of us is not talking is going to be living in that Q&A, answering as many questions as we can. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to give you two promises. Number one, we're going to do the very best we can. Number two, we won't get to every question. We're just outgunned. We're not ignoring you. Um, a lot of the answers are also going to sound generic. I'm going to say, I would need more information. You have to meet with us, right? You're going because we're going to get, hey, we're divorced. Who should complete the FAFSA? Hey, I'm a business owner. What should I value my business at or my other property? We got to sink our teeth into those situations. And we're not being lazy when we say, just grab some time to talk with us and we'll help you there. As we always do, we take care of our live audience. We know how busy you are. It's a school night here, 7 Eastern time, 4 West Coast time, right? You got a lot cooking. We're gonna do we're gonna take care of you. We have a kind of a unique offer that we again, as we always do for our live folks. Stick around to the end. You're gonna hear exactly what that is. So I'm here in the Boston area, just north of Boston, our global corporate headquarters in Salem, Mass. Dan's out there in the Chicago area. Dan, anything else to say? You want to talk any more about your stats or any words to live by before we get cooking?
Yeah, Bears are back, which is great. And yes, thank you. So I've been helping families since 2004 on the financial side of things here for college in the Chicagoland area. Um, so just like Matt said, we kind of between the two of us seen just about all of it over the past 20 plus years. And then recently joined the CAP team about 2 years ago. But like I said, kind of have my own practice for the past 21 years as well.
Yeah, so and just for some context there, I try to do my best to keep a pulse on other experts around the country and world for that matter, and I'm actively recruiting who I think is the best of the best, and that is kind of how we won Dan over when he proved himself, and then he earned the his spot on the team. So questions and Q&A. We are recording this. Everybody will get the recording tomorrow. Tell us what class. Let me break my rule. A couple times I'm going to tell you to throw things in chat. Put in the chat. What's a graduating class of your student? Where are you in the country or the world? We're always very well geographically represented. But tell us where you're at. Put that in the chat. Again, we will get interactive a bit here. And yeah, as always, just awesome representation. Geographically and obviously, you class of 2026 folks are full in it now, right? You are full in it, and if you're not, we got to get it moving here. And the here's our mission, right? Our job. It's a big one. It's an important one. It's to end the student debt crisis. How's that happen? We help people shop smarter for college, right? This is what we do. It starts tonight. Here's the game plan for tonight. Speaking of Chicagoland, go Irish. We're going to learn how do you lower your SAI. We're going to kind of give you the full gamut there. Not every strategy applies to every family, so you need to leave here, and you should if you stay engaged here. Which strategies can my family implement? And I promise you, there's going to be something, at least one of the things that you learn tonight that are going to be relevant for your family specifically. And then I've been really I was super drawn to this term I heard a few weeks ago. Maybe it was more than that. I've been preaching it to the team ad nauseum, and then preaching it to kind of our audience because I think in my opinion, we can all relate to it. Action absorbs anxiety, right? When we're feeling like anxious about anything, the cheat code is take some action, right? We're feeling overwhelmed, checklist too long, with whatever it happens to be, take some action. So we're also going to leave tonight with some, we're going to hit the first two. That's easy. And then the last one is we're going to give you some action items. Do this. If you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling a little bit anxious about this process, you should be. I'd be worried about you if you weren't. Action absorbs anxiety. So we're going to give you some action items at the end here. Dan, horrible picture of you right here. Not your best look. Um, look it
We'll
if you
get that updated next time around.
We will. If you guys have not done this already, set up your MyCap account today, your free account today. If you want to upgrade to all the bells and whistles, it's $5. Don't overthink that one. Okay. Set up your account right now. Guys, this is your cheat code to all things college, especially when it comes to talking about your SAI, how to lower your SAI. So, Dan, if you didn't put that, did you put that link in the chat?
Yeah, I'm gonna put that in right now,
Yeah,
so we'll get on the top there.
yeah, do that for me.
Okay, links in the chat.
If you didn't set up your account, take 2 minutes to do that right now because you're going to get way more out of the presentation tonight, right? And it'll make it a lot more interactive. But before we start talking strategies, Dan's going to set the table for us. What is the student aid index and how does it fit in this, from a meta level?
Yeah, so first you've got your cost of attendance. So when they're looking at how much aid they're going to provide, they're going off the total cost of the school. It's not just the tuition, it's the tuition fees, room and board, as well as those incidental expenses that they're going to take into account for books, travel, and that sort of thing. So when you're getting financial aid, it's based off that like high watermark cost. And then they're going to look at your SAI, or what they call the student aid index. This is this convoluted formula that they've come up with where you're going to plug in your income and certain assets, and it's going to generate this SAI number. Ideally, you want that number as low as possible because the lower the SAI, the more eligibility for grants. They're basically taking the difference between the cost of the school and your SAI, and then that's going to be the need. A key thing to remember then is your SAI would have to be below the cost of the school to qualify. So another reason why it's hard to say like, oh, I make 300 grand a year. Should I not file? I'm not going to qualify. It's like, well, if you're going to an in-state school, you're not. But if the school's, Northwestern at 100 grand a year, you can be making and having more money and still potentially qualify. So you got to have the SAI below the cost of the school. The difference is the need. And then it's up to the school to determine how much of that eligibility they want to meet in the form of a grant or a loan. But they're not obligated to do that. So a key thing that you got to realize through this process is you can't just blanketly assume, oh, my SAI is 30,000. My kid wants to go to Indiana University in Bloomington. There's 60,000. We're eligible for 30K of grants. I'm going to get a $30,000 grant because not so fast. Indiana doesn't offer institutional grants to anyone. So, and a lot of public schools operate that way. It's up to them. Generally speaking, the private schools are going to do a better job of meeting that eligibility than the public ones. So you've got to understand not only the cost of the school and your SAI, but then figuring out based on the specific colleges what they're actually going to meet in terms of your financial aid if you qualify.
So, I mean, and because we may or may not kind of get to this part of it, Dan, but just like talk a little bit about the mechanics of how are colleges arriving at coming up with this student aid index? Like, how do they get that information, right?
Yeah, so the SAI is going to be determined based on the FAFSA form, which is the kind of the more popular form that basically every school requires. And then there's another form called the CSS profile where a couple hundred schools require it in addition to the FAFSA. Examples of those schools would be University of Miami, Florida, Northwestern, your Ivy League schools, generally your higher priced private schools. So you're completing these financial aid forms. You're including your tax return and other income information as well as asset information. And then that info is then what's calculating your SAI. The good news is you set up a MyCap account, you plug in all your information, and it's going to automatically calculate it for you. And then when you add schools to your list in the MyCap platform, it's going to automatically generate the estimated amount of grants and scholarships that that school will provide you.
Yeah, exactly, right. So it's kind of like the we have to do these financial aid applications because that's what helps the college determine our SAI, our foundation for being eligible for financial aid or not, right? So that's where it kind of fits into this uh, context here. You know, something that we like to say internally when we talk about, because I got this question a lot right now. Well, what's the difference between the FAFSA and the CSS profile? Every college requires the FAFSA. And this is, I'm stealing this from my good buddy and colleague, Bill Rabbit. He always coaches it as you can get through the FAFSA with a couple beers, no problem, right? Beer or two, you're fine, not a big deal. You're probably going to need to break into the liquor cabinet, maybe do a whole 30 pack to get to the CSS profile, right? When you hear your friends, colleagues, neighbors talking about the financial aid process being a beast and pulling your hair out and it's so arduous, usually I interpret that to be they're talking about the CSS profile. Right. I think the FAFSA gets better every year, making it more user friendly. It's still a bear for some people. Obviously, everybody's a little bit different. But the CSS profile, even if you're savvy with these types of things, even if you're a CPA that does forms in their sleep, you don't enjoy the CSS profile. So, um, okay, so now let's talk about what are some of the ways, what are some of the things that we can do to make sure that our SAI is as low as it can possibly go. Here's a big one. Every college is different, okay? But generally speaking, with few exceptions, colleges put way more emphasis on any money in the student's name than they do in the parent's name. And here are some kind of averages. Now, so most schools will put about 5.5 to 6% of they will assume that if you have you're a parent, your non-retirement savings and investments, we think you can spend 5.64% of that a year on college. So we're going to add that to your SAI, right, on top of your income. Whereas any money in the student's name, at a minimum, they're going to take 20%. We've seen colleges take 50%. We've seen cases where colleges take 100% of that money. Dan said it earlier. At the end of the day, these colleges can do whatever they want, right? It's up to their discretion. But at a minimum, we know all of these colleges are going to put way more emphasis on any money in the student's name. So what's actionable there? Okay. Guys, if your kids got $10,000 in their savings account, right? They're industrious kids. They've saved their bar mitzvah money. Shana Tova, by the way. They saved their first community money, whatever. Okay. Um, $10,000, that's, when we're talking about $100,000 price tags, how much of a difference can that make? It can make a difference, right? It can make a meaningful difference if it's in the student's name. Whereas if it's in the parent's name, it's a negligible difference, maybe nothing. Okay, when we're talking about 10,000 bucks. So in that example that I just said, okay, if there's 10,000 bucks in your kid's savings account, add your name onto that account tomorrow. And when you go to submit your financial aid applications in October in a few weeks, you include it as your asset as the parents. You just save yourself a lot of money, right? You got that SAI down. So that's a relatively easy one. Now, keep in mind, guys, and this is really, really important because I would say there's a short list here, but I might argue the number one most mission critical mistake that parents make is they include their retirement accounts on the FAFSA. Okay, for the parent and or the student, do not put your retirement accounts on the FAFSA. Right? Let me say that again. Do not put your retirement accounts on the FAFSA. Okay, that'll kill your SAI, and you're not supposed to.
What
Okay,
about my 401k, Matt?
that's it. That's a retirement account, brother. Your
Thank
401k.
you.
your IRA, your pensions, your 403Bs, you're a teacher. It doesn't go on there, guys. So please do not do it. Okay, again one of the kind of top three mission critical mistakes that people make by accident, and it's easy to make, by the way. These are not, you can be very savvy with this stuff and make mistakes on these forms. Okay, here's another one: 529s, because I think a lot of people just heard that and said, "Oh shit, we're not getting our SAI is going to be so high because we're really disciplined in saving in our 529 for our kids, so we're not going to get any need-based financial aid." Guess what? You as the parent own the 529, right? The student is just the beneficiary. So most people, when I ask the students, "What do you have in your asset? How much do you have in assets?" The parents get out the 529 statement. They see their kid's name on it. They see their social security number. They've saved $100,000, and they say, "My kid's got $100,000 in assets via the 529." Wrong. Number one, you're going to kill your SAI. Number two, that's the incorrect way to report it. You, as the parent, own that money. They are just the beneficiary. So again, when we talk about mission critical mistakes, I put this how people report their 529s right there with um, mistakenly reporting their retirement accounts on the FAFSA specifically. Grandparents, some of you are fortunate enough where you've had grandparents that want to contribute towards college, have the ability to contribute towards college. They've created a 529. You guys got it made in the shade. You know why? Because now we don't have to report it at all. The grandpa, and again, perfectly within the rules of the game, the grandparent is the owner of that 529. The kids are the beneficiary. So do not make that mistake. Okay. So this is kind of a decent segue here to kind of talk about, well, like, how do colleges even, how would they know, and what is their audit process, and what are they going to ask for our statements? And I'll tell you, and this isn't, I don't know, a story that goes like this, and I can count it on more than just one hand. So we used to have an actual um, brick and mortar office in Cranford, New Jersey, and we got a lot of Jersey folks. And not to pick on Hudson County, but most of them would come from Hudson County, and when they would hire us, they would show up with an envelope, pay us in cash, sit down, and say, "Tell me what I can get away with." Right? This is how I hire my CPAs, and this is why I'm hiring you guys. Tell me what I can get away with, right? Now, first of all, before I even talk to that, because we've got a lot of those questions of that variety already tonight. We get them all the time. Completely fair. Um, these are your financial aid applications. You're signing them, right? The FAFSA electronically, but you're electronically, it's going to count as a legitimate signature. The FAFSA is a federal form, so you're working not just with the colleges, but with the federal government. Okay, and then again, the CSS profile, it's not a federal form, but the language is going to be pretty clear. Is that the expectation is that you're representing your situation um, accurately to the best of your knowledge and all that. Okay, so to be clear, the language will not be a gray area in terms of what's expected of you in terms of representing, the truth, right? For how you're answering these questions. That doesn't bother a lot of people, fine. But what I'll tell you is this: whatever you report in these financial aid applications has to align with what shows up in your tax returns. When you complete the FAFSA, you're going to connect, right? That is going to be connected with the IRS. They're going to get your tax returns directly from the IRS. The private colleges are also going to want a copy in most cases of your federal tax returns and all schedules, right? Because a lot of people, I'll talk to a lot of people. I had this conversation earlier today. Screw these colleges. They're $100,000. I'm telling them I got nothing in savings and no investments, no assets. I said, that's fine. That's your choice. But they're going to get your tax returns and they're going to say you got $10,000 in taxable interest, $20,000 in dividends, and you had $40,000 in capital gains last year. You're not going to get in trouble, but they're going to reverse engineer. They're going to back into a number, okay, that they think that you have for assets, and they're going to package you accordingly. You're probably not going to like that number, but that's the story that has to make sense. So just to get ahead of that question, because I've been personally pinged with a few variations of that already. That's the answer. Okay, whatever you report on there has to make sense with what shows up on your tax returns. Another kind of little option you have here now is that the FAFSA no longer asks you to include for the 529 balances for younger siblings. So some people, if they have a younger sibling, they'll transfer the beneficiary, okay, to the younger sibling, and that is something that can potentially help in terms of reducing our SAI. Okay, now here's before I pass the mic to Dan here, just to set the stage. Along those lines, we get the question all the time too, some variation of, where can I hide money, right? If I want to hide money outside, of underneath my mattress, which by the way, they will ask what you have in cash. Um, is it and then again too, people that are just not even, you're just trying to be smart and be strategic here. Are there places that these outside of retirement that these colleges won't look? The short answer is yes. Dan's going to talk through that. But when we get the question, should we move money? Is it worth it, right? Shelter money from the financial aid calculation. This is kind of what the answer usually is, right? From meta terms. Yeah, maybe. It depends. That's the big one there. For most families, no. We are where we are. But Dan, just like talk us through kind of how you coach this and a little bit about what some of these options, might look like when it makes sense.
Yeah, I think first we got to give a disclaimer here. Remember, we're talking to a large group.
Right.
We cannot make like specific recommendations on move money from A to B without meeting with you, over Zoom, seeing tax returns and other financial statements. Um, but I think the first thing you've got to figure out is, are you going to qualify for financial aid, right? Like if your SAI is 200,000 and we move 100 grand and now it's 190,000, well, that doesn't do us any good. We're not going to get any grants in that scenario. So, if you're not going to qualify for financial aid, it doesn't matter how much money you move, because sometimes your income alone is going to preclude you from qualifying. Your SAI is going to be too high. Then boom, we're moving on. It's not something you're going to consider. Um, Two, you got to be cognizant of the schools your kid is applying to. Like I talked about earlier, especially at these large public universities, sometimes it doesn't matter if your SAI is below the cost of attendance of the school because they still weren't going to give you a grant. So if we're trying to, go to Indiana or Miami of Ohio or Penn State or some of these schools, it's not going to matter if we get your SAI down to 10 or 20 or 30,000. They're still not going to give you a grant. Um, On the flip side of that, if your kid's going to private schools or especially like higher price, more elite private schools who generally meet 100% of your eligibility, now those are the cases where if you can move money and then get your SAI below the cost of attendance of the school, you could be in a position where it's going to make sense and it's going to increase the grants. Um, so the key things are, I think, first and foremost are, what is your SAI? What really realistically is it going to get down to? What are the schools that are potentially in play? And again, private, it's going to make a heck of a lot more sense than almost all public schools. I think this is going to kind of be a moot point. Um, and then we got to figure out too, where is the money coming from, right? Because if you've got money in Google stock that you bought 10 years ago and you want to cash it out and move it somewhere else and you're going to pay huge capital gains, well, that's going to get reported on your tax return and that's going to have an impact on future financial aid. So, another key thing to understand is where are you taking the money from? Because if it's going to generate large tax implications, that could have a negative impact and be, basically counterproductive to what we're trying to do here. Um, and at the end of the day, kind of as we've talked about, the retirement accounts are protected. That's where you can have money and they are not going to take it into account within this SII formula. But you can't just put 100 grand in your 401k or IRA, there are limits there. Um, and basically the vehicle that we can use, again, you have to check a number of boxes to get to this point for this to make sense. So please don't everybody go out and fire sale everything and go do this because it's got to be verified. But the what you can use is a cash value life insurance policy. It falls under the purview of being a retirement account, but you aren't subject to the IRA and 401k rules in terms or limits in terms of how much you can put into the policy, which can basically be in unlimited amount. And you have complete access to the cash value within that policy as soon as you deposit the funds. So you can make withdrawals to pay for college, but then you don't have to report it on any of the financial aid forms. Um, the only other retirement account that some people can say you can use would be a non-qualified annuity. But the issue with a non-qualified annuity is twofold, one of which you do have to report it on the CSS profile, which again, those are the schools that generally do the best job of providing grants. So that really wouldn't work. And in most annuities, you are going to have typically large upfront surrender fees. So if you put the money in, you may be, limited to 80 to 90% of the value, or you're going to pay like a 10 to 20% penalty to liquidate that money or get the money back right away. So there's definitely ways that you can do this. It just a lot depends on what the tax return looks like in terms of your income, what schools the kids are applying to, and then what money are we looking to move, and does it make sense based on are there any tax implications to kind of getting those funds from where they are and moving them elsewhere? So there are a lot of boxes that you have to check to make this work. But hopefully that kind of gives you guys a good idea of kind of what might be possible here depending on your situation.
Yeah, and I'll give my kind of Cliff Notes summary of that from where I sit, right? And we're very kind of philosophically aligned here. The reason why it doesn't make money for most people to kind of move, shelter, hide money, whatever term you want to use, is that number one, you have to check on, and I'm just going to reiterate, in my words, what Dan said. Your income can't be too high. You have to have a lot of uh, savings, okay, that's more or less in cash, right? If most of our money is invested in the market, then we got to be really careful about capital gains and things like that. It's really rare that again we would make recommendations to say, yeah, pull your money out of the market. So the first two boxes we're checking are low income, high cash. That doesn't, a lot of people don't fit into that box. And the third one is we're targeting schools that are really expensive and really good with need-based financial aid. Okay, so so again, that's kind of rare for us to even say let's have this conversation, right? But we got to check those three boxes before we even do. And then when we do, it's going to be some type of product that has life insurance attached to it. So the colleges, no colleges consider that quote unquote fair game within the financial aid calculation. This is not a place we're going to put money if we're not talking about college. The upside, the gains we're getting is the discounts that we're getting via colleges. Essentially, we're putting this money on the shelf for a few years so we can get those bigger discounts. But again, we get the question all the time, so we want to, provide as much information as we can. And hopefully the takeaway is like, don't go out and execute on this stuff. Talk to us or talk to somebody that knows what they're talking about around this stuff, and make sure that before we even think about pursuing it, we're checking those big boxes here. Okay, so SAI, owning your home, right? What does that have to do with it? In some ways, Dan said this when we were in the green room before here. He's like, "Why are you just putting those four colleges on there?" It's a good point because it is unfair to these four colleges because they are one of several dozen. These are just examples and relatively, I think household names here. But these are one of several dozen colleges where if you own your home, if you live in your home, and you own it, they consider the equity in your primary residence fair game, right? Boston College, my buddies, Boston College in my backyard here, they're going to say, if your home's worth 600 and you have a $200,000 mortgage, that's a $400,000 checking account as far as we're concerned, right? That's essentially what these colleges, and again, they're I'm picking on these four here, just to give you an idea. But that's a problem for a lot of us, right? We own our home, and maybe a lot of us, live in these expensive areas of the country where real estate's really high, and we're lucky just to make our nut each month, much less save money. So we don't have a ton of savings, but maybe it's only the four savings we have, in our home. So what the hell can we do here? There's a few things. Number one, that's why we're gonna know. Which colleges are considering home equity? Some of them, even the ones that require the CSS profile, don't look at home equity at all. Amherst College, Williams, Middlebury, uh, U Chicago, Stanford, MIT, right? You can own your home. They don't care. Okay. Even though they use that institutional methodology. Then there's some schools in between. We look at your home equity, but we don't look at all of it. How much we look at is you know it has to do with how much income you make, and there's kind of a formula for that. Now, again, guys, you have the cheat code right now. Every college's business model is baked into the platform. We're going to get in there in a second and look at some examples. If you haven't set up your account yet, do it right now, because you can also just search. Just go show me colleges that use the federal methodology that only require the FAFSA, because that means none of them are looking at your home equity at all, and we know that for sure. But what about those that do? Right? We're not going to not apply to Syracuse just because if our kid loves the school and we're feeling pretty good about it overall, but they consider home equity. Number one, whatever our market value is, we want to give our we want to find our lowest defensible value for our market value of our home, and we can reduce it by 20%. Why? Let's say I own my home outright. It's worth $1 million and I don't have any debt on it, right? Not to be clear, neither of those are true. Okay. But if it were, and I sold my home for $1 million tomorrow, I'm not putting $1 million in my pocket. Okay. Even though I have no debt on it, I'm going to pay taxes. That's going to be a biggie. I'm going to pay fees, right? And on average, 20% of that is coming off the top. And I will put in that example, 800,000 in my pocket. So that's where we are very comfortable in defending when we show the value of our home to these colleges, reducing it by 20%, knowing that that's what we would actually net, at the end of the day. Okay. Another tool we can use is the Federal Housing Index multiplier. That ties us back to when we bought our home and how much we paid for it at the time. And we'll give a less aggressive value than we actually might have right now, especially if we bought our home a while ago. And then there's things that we can do to get strategic around the debt. Do we have an equity line of credit, right? Can we leverage that? So we're showing more debt on our home, because again, it's not necessarily the value, it's the equity. So it's the value minus the debt. So if that's an instrument we can leverage, that's great, because we'll shrink the size of that asset. We'll lower our SAI at those colleges that are considering it. Business owners, okay, this is something that, again, again, when we talk about mission critical mistakes, this is one of these things that so many families that own their business, whether they're just a sole proprietor, or they have, they run a restaurant. It doesn't matter if it's an LLC or an S corp or C corp. It doesn't really matter how you're structured, but they're going to ask you about the value of your business on the FAFSA. Okay, here's the thing, guys, and they're going to ask about the value and the assets of your business on the FAFSA. Most of you guys, most of you, you're going to put just such a small number and be comfortable putting zero, because they're going to say if you have less than 100 employees, okay, go ahead and you don't have to report the value of your business on the FAFSA. So you should perk up if you're self-employed right now, and just remember on the FAFSA, we're going to write a zero down there. We're going to feel fine about that. The CSS profile is a little bit more complex, because if we're a business owner, we can't there's no allowances like what's the size of your business, and if you're less than 100 employees, put zero. And by the way, that's buried in the fine print on the FAFSA, so this is why you have to pay attention here. But on the CSS profile, they're going to ask you some specifics, right, around the business, and what did you gross, what were your expenses, right? And again, they're getting your tax returns here, but they're also going to ask you for a value. Just if you're going to miss on one side, just have miss on the low side. Again, be comfortable in some cases putting down zero, and be happy to have that conversation. We love having conversations with colleges. We would much rather have a conversation, bring our side of the story to the table, as opposed to them just assigning a value to us, or worse yet, us overvaluing ourselves and again disqualifying or really hurting our SAI, and therefore hurting our need-based financial aid eligibility. So don't hurt yourself here. Is kind of the big takeaway. And again, be comfortable that in some cases, right? I help a lot of people get down to that zero value, and then we we'll have that conversations if it when it becomes relevant with the colleges.
I I mean, not to interrupt, but I mean, I would say almost every CSS profile I review that's a business owner that they do it themselves, they overvalue their business.
Right. I agree. It's almost universal.
Even values that they couldn't even sell their business for anyway. It's remember, people, we're trying to look poor in these forms, not rich. But sometimes,
Egos get in the way sometimes. Yeah,
yeah.
egos get in the way.
I
Um,
think the other thing too is I think there's a misconception on this, especially the CSS profile, that this is a form that's generated to like help get you financial aid when it's actually the opposite. It's a form that's asking you 500 questions, and then you can answer one of those questions incorrectly, and then the school can hold it against you and offer you less financial aid.
right.
So it is critical you are filling these forms out to the best, to put yourself in the best position to receive grants.
100%. Dan, just talk. I'll spell me for a second here and talk about best practices for divorced families and how this works, specifically FAFSA only versus CSS profile schools.
Okay, so for the FAFSA schools, or when you're, I should say, when you're filling out the FAFSA, if the parents are divorced and they're living separately, only one parent's finances is going to go on the FAFSA. So you can't put both. It has to be one, assuming they're divorced and not living together. And according to the FAFSA's new rules that they made a couple years ago, they want the parent who completes the fast, or what they call the custodial parent, to be the one who provided a majority of the student's financial support the previous 12 months. It is not who claimed the child on the tax return. It's not who earned more money. It's not who the kid lived with. It's which parent provided a majority of that student's financial support. And as you can imagine, that's kind of a hard thing for the school to understand or to know how to calculate. And especially if you're in a divorce situation yourself where you're like splitting it 50-50, I mean, how are you even going to figure that out, right? It's not an easy thing to figure out for some families. In my experience, the colleges are going to go with what you tell them. So the letter of the law is who provided a majority of the financial support over the previous 12 months. But this is definitely an area where we can get strategic because obviously, if you're a divorced family, someone has or is making more money than the other. And if one parent applies for the FAFSA versus the other, it could definitely have an impact on the amount of grants that your student is receiving. So, this is a major thing that we're helping families with who are divorced, leading up to figuring out how they should apply for aid to maximize their eligibility and evaluating both parents' financial situations to help them understand that. Now, for the CSS profile, it's a little bit different. Almost every school who requires the CSS profile also requires the non-custodial profile. So now, if the kid is applying to Northwestern or University of Miami, Florida, or Tulane, they may not have had to report the ex's finances on the FAFSA, but both parents have to file a CSS, and then they look at both parents' finances. Um, and the tricky part here is like generally the CSS schools do a better job of providing grants than the FAFSA schools, but then they're also kind of asking a lot more questions. Or in a divorce family, they're going to look at both parents' income instead of one. Um, I would say at least for me, the big exception here is Vanderbilt and University of Chicago. Those are two schools I see a lot of kids applying to. They're obviously extremely difficult to get accepted to. Um, but both of them do a great job of offering financial aid, but they don't ask for both parents' finances. So, if you're a divorced family and you both working, making money, and your kid's applying to Northwestern and University of Chicago, I would expect Chicago to give a far better offer than Northwestern in that example. So if you're divorced, not this whole thing is just a lot more complicated, and there's a lot more nuance there. And then that means there's also a lot more areas that we can strategize in terms of helping save money or putting us in a better position to kind of maximize our eligibility.
Yeah. So I mean, look, this process is complicated enough for anybody. I don't care if you're right down the fairway. If there is a family that's right down the fairway, I've yet to meet them. But the when we're divorced or separated, split household family, all right, or maybe just in that transition, right? We were married filing jointly last year. We've separated since. Maybe it's legal. Maybe it's not, right? Maybe we're deciding, right? it makes it that much more complicated. And again, each of these colleges treat it differently. Most of the FAFSA only, or the FAFSA only schools only requiring one household. We want to be strategic. Who fills that out? CSS profile. Most of them requiring both households. Not all of them, right? Again, all of that is baked into the platform, guys. So you don't have to go do research. It's all right there. So make sure you're taking advantage if you haven't already. But the other thing I was saying, I got a bunch of questions and I was doing my best as Dan was talking. Listen, some of you are in situations where you are divorced and you don't know where the other spouse is, okay? Or they're not a part of your life. You haven't seen them in years. Maybe there's we just work with enough families to get into situations where it can be even dangerous, contacting the ex-spouse. So of course these situations exist. But these colleges are saying, well, their information is required. When that is the case, you're going to contact these colleges individually, right? You're going to contact Northwestern, for example, and say, hey, here's what's going on. They're going to make you apply for what's called the non-custodial waiver. It's this application that you have to complete. To be honest, it's a little bit of a yucky process because they really make you air your dirty laundry to qualify for this non-custodial waiver. But it is worth going through that kind of pain, because if you qualify for it, they're going to say, okay, got it, message received, and we will now not require the information from the other uh, parent, given all the reasons that you've listed here. So that's what happens if you're in one of those unfortunate situations. Okay. Now, obviously, the goal is a lot of people say there's some bad actors in our industry. Dan and I know that, and that's why we're always kind of hesitant to even mention some of the things that Dan was talking through earlier in terms of can we have money and insurance products? Because a lot of, I don't want to say it. Yeah, I can. I think I can. A lot of folks and professionals in our space are insurance salesmen, kind of disguised as college funding experts here. Okay, and they'll say things like, "I can get your SAI down 50,000." If your SAI is 200,000, that doesn't matter, right? For some of you, there's no magic wand that I can wave, Dan can wave, Peggy can wave, anybody on our team. We're not going to get need-based financial aid. Now, don't disqualify yourself. I talked to somebody yesterday that said that you just said in passing, I have a question for you. I know I'm not going to get need-based financial aid because I got $350,000 income. I got 200,000 in a 529, and I own my home outright. I said, what colleges you're applying to? I'm like, huh, that's funny. You're going to get $50,000 a year in need-based financial aid. So if he didn't talk to me, he wouldn't apply for financial aid. He would have left $200,000 in free money, right? And that's somebody that's making 350, 200K in a 529. But based on his colleges and based on the fact that he has other kids that are going to be in college as well as some other variables here, that was his deal. I digress. Some of you, I would say, right? I have those conversations. Say, you're right. You're not getting financial aid. Right. And so schools like now there's over 100 colleges in the country that don't offer scholarships, MIT and Harvard, right? Nobody's walking around those campuses on scholarships. Okay. They meet 100% in need. Who cares if our SAI is $150,000? So we have to go find colleges that are going to give us merit-based aid. That's one thing that we're going to do. Right. Here's another really important one. If we have this really high SAI, it's important for everybody, but especially if we have this high SAI, we have to apply to competing schools. Okay, I like to use BU and Northeastern, right? Two really popular schools in my backyard in Boston here. They're kind of different. BU is just kind of into the city, right? The T basically runs through the campus, whereas NYU has a little bit more of a, kind of your quad setting. They have this 5-year co-op. So although they're both urban schools in Boston, they have some significant differences. Some families love one, they hate the other. I make them apply to both. Somebody says I love Northeastern and I hated BU. Too bad, brother. You're applying to BU. I know you're never going to go there, but you have a very high SAI. So the only way we're going to get a better deal from Northeastern is if we show them a competing college and we leverage them against one another. So this is a strategy that no, it's not necessarily lowering your SAI, but if you're one of those families, and this works for everybody, you have to apply to competing schools. Okay, so that's just a very important strategy. Even if my SAI is wicked high, why would I do the FAFSA, do the CSS profile? I got reasons that I can put together a bulletproof plan of why you should still do it. Here's a few actual school examples. NYU, no problem. if you don't not eligible for need-based financial aid, if you want to be considered for scholarships, you have to be you have to complete the FAFSA and the CSS profile. Santa Clara, if you don't apply for financial aid the first year, they will never consider your application for all 4 years, regardless of what happens in subsequent years. Okay. Oklahoma, you want to get more scholarships, you want to appeal for more financial aid, not happening. They're not, and they appeal for higher scholarships. Oklahoma does if you don't have a FAFSA on record. Now, again, I am picking on these three schools. They represent a whole bunch of others, okay, that have kind of these policies here. So I'm going to stop sharing for just a second, guys, because I want to go in and kind of look at some case study stuff, kind of put some of this stuff that concepts that we're talking about together.
I think this will help address a lot of questions too. When people are like, how, does Providence provide money? Or,
Yeah.
there's like, what if I have twins? Like, great news. Just go to the link we sent, plug in your information, then put in the schools, and you're going to find out exactly based on your particular details what these schools are going to award you.
Exactly.
Which
And the
obviously is impossible for us to do now if just having one sentence of information about you, because a lot
right.
more goes into it than that.
And then all this stuff we're saying, guys, it's all baked into the algorithm here. The nice thing about our projections are they're reliable. It's not like the college's net price calculators here. And we have this is a net price calculator for every college in the country that actually works, right? All in one space. So you're going to have your SAI staring you front and center as soon as you onboard yourself, right? And I know I actually see that most of you have already created your accounts, which is awesome. But so you already know your SAIs before you've even gone on to the FAFSA. You know what it's going to say as a result. The nice part about submitting the FAFSA is it tells you your SAI after. The CSS profile doesn't, but guess what? You guys are going to know it, right? Because you have it right here. There's no excuse now. You guys don't have an excuse for not knowing how much a college is going to cost you, before you apply. Okay. Now let's look at, and this is again kind of the home dashboards. All your colleges net costs are going to be over here again. Your SAIs um, do me a favor, guys. Let's actually look at some colleges and put in the chat some of the colleges you guys are maybe you're thinking about applying ED. Maybe it's your top choice. Maybe it's your alma mater. Okay, I saw it. I saw TCU is the first one. Let's look at Texas Christian. What is it? The Horned Frogs down there. What do they call the Horned Toads? What is it? Maga, you know.
I think it's Horned Frogs.
Horned Frogs, right? That's what I thought. Yeah. So, okay. So we see this, scary sticker price, 88,000. Oh my God, who cares about the sticker price, guys? That is a distraction for most families. I want to know, what am I paying? Right? These aren't averages. This is tailor made for you, your family, your kid. Why am I only going to pay $56,000? Do a deep dive, right? Do a deep dive. We're going to tell you some helpful information about that school, right? Okay, what's the average GPA? What's the average test scores? What is their acceptance rate? Why am I getting a a discount here? Well, here's what I'm going to get in financial aid each year in my net cost, not only in year one, but all 4 years, guys. When we say the SAI basis, this is the business model of the school. So, okay, institutional methodology, it means they're probably looking at least some home equity. They're probably looking at both households if I'm divorced. Now, again, if they're one of the exceptions, it's built into the algorithm here. Here's what the average, how many kids get scholarships and the average amount. What is my kid going to get? If I go to this merit-based scholarships tab, right? For every college in the country, we have every scholarship that they offer, the qualifications for each. We're unique because we're going to tell you, well, how much is your kid going to get? Right? So this family, this is why they're getting a meaningful discount here. $30,000 via merit-based scholarship. So let's go just look at another one here. So, okay, Yale was the second one I saw. Okay, Yale, very scary sticker price, 96,000. We're paying 47. Right, we're paying 47 to go there. Well, why? Okay, and again, we can take that deep dive. Well, nobody gets in there. That's the bad news, right? 5% acceptance rate and you know, average ACT of 34 and average GPA is I don't know, perfect. But also, okay, here's why we're getting so much financial aid, right? They meet 100% of need. Makes sense. I got it. And then we can just go sort colleges, guys, based on, for example, based on, okay, just show me the ones that, you know, are only going to use FAFSA. okay, for example, that also have, are a small college and is close to my home or in this region, right? You can put all these filters you want in here and just go search based on that, or just go show me who's got my major is in my region of the country that we want to go to school, and rank based on who's going to get the most of merit-based scholarships, right? Um, so really, really unique, I think, and we can do things in real time, guys, as because obviously the drivers for what is your SAIs and your merit-based scholarships is what you put in here for information. So, for example, you can say, hey, what if I did shelter 100,000 versus $200,000? How would that impact my SAI and net costs at the colleges we're thinking about? Should I use my ex's information versus my information? Who's going to give us the most in financial aid? This is your sandbox. You can make any changes to anything, and we will instantly populate. Okay, well, what is that going to do for your net costs, at these colleges? And as you're finalizing the list of schools, guys, this is like your heat map in terms of affordability, right? Your guidance counselors has your safety target reach, admissions. We want the same thing from an affordability standpoint. And why is, and again, I can pick on any school. Why is, you know, uh, um, Loyola Chicago going to be a good outcome from an affordability standpoint? Well, here's how much here's the sticker price over 4 years versus what I'm going to pay after, scholarships and grants. Um, and here's my budget. So somebody's going to have to borrow X amount, right? And how does that look next to the average starting salary at this school based on the major for my kid, right? So we've tried to be really comprehensive in doing all your homework for you here to have a really good sense of what outcomes are going to look like. So again, if you haven't set up your account already, um, do it do it right now, right? And again, if you want to have unlimited schools here and have the ability to filter based on who's going to give you the most money, it's an investment of $4.99. I think in the grand scheme of things, we feel like that is providing legitimate value, but you go in there and be the judge. At a minimum, no excuse not to set up your free account. So I want to bring up this deck, Dan, because when it comes to the SAI, the last concept, I just want you to, kind of like briefly talk through before we get to our action items here, because this applies to everybody. Um, just talk, and just talk about this appeal process in your words.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons or ways that you can be appealing. I think the maybe easiest, most successful, I guess is the way that I would put it, way would be, let's say you're applying for aid for the 26-27 school year. That is going to be based off your 2024 income. And 2025 looks a lot different, or it has less income than 24's. You have to report your 24 income on the FAFSA on the profile. There's no way around that. But if your 25 return is going to report less income, I'm telling my clients, listen, file that return as quickly as you can come, the winter of 2026. And as soon as we have that return filed, we're going to go back to the college individually. We're not going to go to FAFSA. We're not going to go to CSS. You're going to talk directly to the school, and you're going to make them aware of your change. And then they're going to basically go behind the scenes and manually update everything. So you still have to report 24 numbers on the form, and then you're appealing directly to the college about that change in circumstance um, after the student has been accepted. All schools are going to treat those appeals differently. So my suggestion is you're reaching out via phone to the college, explaining the situation, and then they will advise you, okay, here's what we need you to complete so that we can reevaluate, which is another reason why everyone should be applying for aid in the first place. Because if you never applied for aid in the first place and then you lose your job, you call up the school, they're going to be like, well, did you fill out the FAFSA? No. All right, well, wait till next year. If it's Santa Clara, like, sorry, you can't even apply in the future years. So it's like a mini insurance policy kind of in case something changes. So I think that is like, I would say a really common one. And then the other one is, this is a lot harder to win, but your kid is going to get in and want to go to the most expensive school, but they're going to get awards from other schools that are far better. Um, so it's how do we ask for more money given the other awards? And Matt was kind of touched on this earlier about being strategic in terms of where you apply in terms of competing colleges. And that can definitely be, I think that's an easier battle to win, so to speak, at the private schools than maybe the larger public universities. Um, but you've got to set yourself up for that now, because if you just let your kid apply wherever they want and they don't do that, by the time you get these awards in the spring, the application deadlines have passed and there's nothing you can do. So you've got to be setting yourself up now for a potential appeal in the future, either based on how the kid is applying, how you're completing the forms. There's a myriad of different ways that you can do that to kind of set yourself up.
Yeah, put your bet exactly. And always like to say that's why it's right on there. You know, a successful appeal starts right now. Okay, so here's what I want to talk through. We got action items here, right? Action absorbs anxiety. We're going to end with what we started with here. Um, the so a few things and my kind of my mini take on appeals is you're not taking the first offer, right? When these college, that's the mindset, right? Now there's a method to the madness. How do we go back? That there's a huge differentiation between colleges. Do we go back to admissions? Do we go back to financial aid? Both? Is it parent, student? But that's the takeaway. We're not taking the first offer. So here's the deal, guys. For our class 2026, you younger folks have a little bit more time, but we can only service. We're just kind of at our roster is all but full. We can only work one on one with 10 more families. Okay, I'm going to talk about what that looks like. But even if you're a DIYer, hang on for us because I'm going to talk about what you should be doing next. So let me give you a quick idea of what our Wake Me Up When It's Over service looks like. And we have a financial aid component, we have an admissions component, and then we have folks that are like, I need help with both of those. So for financial aid, what's going to happen right now for your 2026 folks? Obviously, we are going to complete your FAFSA and your CSS profile. We do that for you. We worry about who needs what, where, when, how. The how is the mission critical part because how you present your situation dictates your SAI, dictates your discounts, dictates your appeal. Okay, how do we value our business? Who completes it if we're divorced or separated? What can we do in terms of our home equity, right? Does it make sense to shelter anything? How do we report the 529s, right? That's our job, okay, to nail that for you. We're also going to say, we're going to look at your current list of schools. And even if you tell us it's set in stone, we're going to say, we want you to add these A, B, and C schools because they're direct competitors, right, for your top choices. That's going to help us create more leverage. If your list is not set in stone, we're going to have firm recommendations. Say, here's a few more that are checking your admissions boxes, but we know we're going to get the most bang for our buck, right? When it comes time to appeal, we're doing that for you as well, right? So you're working with us one on one, unlimited hours for all of this from now until your kid's moving into their dorm, next August, right? And Dan specifically is somebody that you can work with through this process. Okay, and this is just our metrics. This is from last season, right? On average, we're saving families about $123,000, right, through this, in addition to a meaningful amount of time. If you're somebody that your kid needs help on the admissions front, you want to make sure their essay is perfect, Common App is dialed, right? These intricacies, like, it's so important. I know this is mostly common knowledge, but it's so important, the order in which you list your activities on the Common App, specifically the first three, right? These kinds of things, like what's our proactive approach to increase our admissions odds. If you don't want to be the one kind of managing your kid there and just want to make sure that their applications are as dialed as they can be, think about working with us for the admissions piece. And of course, there's those that want both. I want you admissions experts to grab the wheel for my kid, and I want you to grab the wheel on the financial aid side for us as parents. So if you're even thinking about this, do it tonight, right? It's $500 off. It expires at midnight, right? So generally speaking, our admissions package is $34.99. It's $29.99 if you use the coupon code tonight. We cannot offer a discount on the admissions only package, okay, if that's something you're interested in, but we can do it on the combo. If you want admissions and financial aid help, we can do it on the financial aid if you do it tonight. So how it will work, for example, what is my coupon code is SAI 500. So on this link, and let me make sure it's in the chat. Did you put in the chat already, Dan? I will. I will.
Yeah, sorry, I was answering a question. What do you want me to throw in there?
Well, I'm putting this landing page link in the chat, but
Okay.
how you sign up is if you're like, if you want to be one of these last 10, well, make it last 8. Um, if you want to sign up for a combo package or any of these, you just hit enroll now. Okay. What you're going to do is you're going to put in your promotion code SAI 5. Oh, no, that's not, sorry. What did I say? SAI 500.
I think it was 6.
Uh, no,
No,
five.
yeah, SAI 500.
Right.
You
And
got it.
then that will apply right away. And then you check out, you'll hear from our team right away. We're going to get to work, hit the ground running tomorrow. Obviously, we are officially at game time. So, quite literally, we will be digging in tomorrow um, in terms of getting to work here. So, that's how it works. Now, like I said, we're only taking 10. We're down to 8. We got 2 off the big board here. So, and if you think you want to do it and it sounds like it makes a lot of sense, but you didn't get a chance to talk to your partner or your ex-partner or whatever, sign up to get one of the last 10. And if you find out tomorrow or later this week that it wasn't a good fit for you guys, you got buyer remorse, we'll give you the full refund, no questions asked. We'll open up that spot for everybody else, but that'll at least lock in your $500 discount and make sure that you're on our roster. Now, for some of you that are just like, I really want to do this, but there's no way I can commit tonight. Totally understand. Book some time to talk with us here, okay? And even if you might not be able to use the discount code, just again, you'll be able to take your time, talk to your partner, whoever's involved here, but book some time to talk to us, and we can, help you find out, do you need just financial aid, just admissions? Is it both? We'll get you in the right package. Now, some of you, you're just DIYers. I'm not going to change you. I'm not trying to change you, right? You do your own backsplash, change your own oil, paint your fence, the whole deal. You're a DIYer, Dan?
No.
Yeah, you don't strike me as one. No offense, I'm not either. I outsource.
When my lawn people came to start cutting, they read me the riot act. Like, what have you been doing to your lawn? They had to fix so many things because I was just so inept. Yeah, I'm great at a lot of things. My wife would agree, but I'm terrible at a lot of things too. And
That's
cutting my grass is a great example, or fixing anything in my house.
like we got you here. That's why a lot of times I'll barter with my buddies in the trades here. I'll help you get your kid into school, and you show me how to swing your hammer. Better yet, swing it for me. But look at for you DIYers, guys. Upgrade to the premium version of the software. It's $5 a month. It cancel anytime, right? But $4.99. In addition to the software itself, right? Again, you can put unlimited schools in there. You can sort just based on who's going to give you the most money, right? Obviously, I showed just a little part of the platform today. We guide you all the way up through graduation as well. So if you are a DIYer, at least invest the $5. And but here is my plead for all of you, right? Action absorbs anxiety. You have to be feeling some level of overwhelmingness around this um, process. Okay, identify which step is the right one for you because I feel very strongly, I feel passionately that you fall into one bucket. If you're someone that's like, Jesus, take the wheel. I understand what's at stake here. I don't want to make any mistakes. I see the ROI. Our ROI is unbelievable. It speaks for itself. That $123,000 number is data driven. We didn't pull that out of thin air. Sign up for that. You're going to thank yourself. Okay. You're going to thank yourself, and we guarantee that, right? That's why when our batting average is so strong, and when it's not, we make it right. But I guarantee that will be a good worthwhile investment. If you can't do that tonight, but you're really interested but whatever, book a time to talk with us tomorrow or the end of the week or whatever. That's your action. If you know you're a DIYer, I'm never going to outsource this thing. Again, you know who you are. Sign up for $4.99. So take an action. Again, you're one of those three. Um, take some action. I guarantee you that will give will bring your shoulders down a little bit. Um, just by taking that step tonight. So take one of them, right? Again, don't just leave here with some new tips and kind of go back to your life. Take some action here. Um, really good questions, really engaged questions. Again, I said it at the top. We weren't if we didn't get to your question, we weren't ignoring you. We are just outgunned. Um, if we gave you an answer like, look, we would need to talk to you, we learned to learn more. That's not generic. That's not a company line. That's not us being lazy. It would be reckless for us to answer some of the questions that were asked, even though they were great questions, right? That's the only good answer we could give now. Like I said, like Dan said. So, um,
You
uh,
want to guess how many we answered?
I bet we hit 100. We hit over 100, didn't we?
140.
140 answers. So that's you can't say we didn't. The effort wasn't there. I don't think.
How many are the Bears going to put on the Raiders on Sunday? More or less than
Well,
140?
yeah, yeah.
Big question.
Hey, buddy, the Bears know they're a buzzsaw. They, they beat the Cowboys all of a sudden. They're a buzzsaw. And yeah, yes, if you sign up now for class 2028, excuse me, that covers you, excuse me, through graduation. Yep. It does not cover you through college. It covers you until you move into your dorm, is the way that we put it. If you stay with us in subsequent years, for college, it's $300 for those subsequent years, if and when you decide to renew. Okay. Um, all right, Dan. We're 6 minutes overtime here. I guess, go Bears if you're Dan and Chicagoland folks. I spin two plates here. Go Pats. Go Chargers. Okay. But yeah, and whoever you pull for, have some fun out there. All right, Dan. Appreciate you, brother.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Have a great night.